Welcome to today's webinar on advanced content services for Office 365. We've got a pretty good audience. We always like to start on time. We hope others will continue to join, but we're going to go ahead and jump in anyway. So today, I'm joined by Constantine from KnowledgeLake. Constantine is a solution architect. He's going to do the demos today. No Jim today. If you've been on our other webinars, just David today from ShareSquared. And so this will be a great webinar. We're going to do about 45 minutes of demo time, something like that, and just a little bit of slide presentation to get sort of a foundation for what we're talking about. So we hope you'll hang in for all of that. And then at the end, we'll do an extended QA as necessary. So we will be saving all the questions until the end. We will also email out within a couple of days links to the webinar recording and the presentation. So if you've been on our webinars, you know that we usually do that the next day or the day after, and you can go onto our website and take a look at those. So we always like to set an intention for our webinar. The intention for today is to teach and share information, not to sell or present the answer. So we're not saying that what you're going to see today is the best way or the only way. All of the technologies we work with continue to evolve. So, at ShareSquared, we've had, many evolutions in our 15-year history. Example, we used to do a lot of custom code. Now we don't do that so much anymore. Different third-party products. So we're just going to present our sort of current view of the enterprise content and records management market, and hopefully, you'll get something of value out of that. We have been doing a webinar series pretty much all year. I think this is the 9th webinar in the series, so this is the last one for 2020, and I'll talk later about next year's webinar series. So we want to complete on that. We're always looking to foster a community of people who want to improve technology systems and their efficacy for their organizations, and people who want to learn more. Constantine and I are constant learners. There's always new technology coming out, and we try to stay on top of it. At the end of this session, we'll answer your questions, and you can certainly follow up with me directly if you have questions that don't get answered. We want to enroll you into being in action. It's one thing to sit on a webinar and get good information. It's another thing to take what you learned and turn it into value for yourself or your organization. So it almost doesn't count unless you do something with the information, and we're happy to help you if you're not sure where to start. And mostly we want to be of service to you. We've been doing these webinars, as I said, all year. We don't get paid for it. We aren't doing it for any particular reason. We'd love to do business with you, and we want to be in service to what you're up to. Okay, today's agenda, I'm going to do a sort of an overview of the enterprise content management and records management ecosystem and the different components and things like that. Some of this you'll already know if you've got systems, but it may be a slightly different view of it. I'm not focusing on any one particular system. Toward the end of that overview, I will map it back to Office 365, but some of it is just sort of general information. And then I'll turn the mic over to Constantine, and he'll do a short overview of the KnowledgeLake platform, and then go and get into the demos. And again, we will be going, for an hour, and we'll stay around for an additional 15 minutes for extended QA as necessary. Okay, so we're going to start off with a poll. We want to know what systems people are using out there. It's impossible to list them all. So if kind of the way this lays out is the top line is I would call them legacy systems. Systems been around for a while. They're the sort of enterprise systems. The next layer, we usually see Laserfish and OnBase used at the departmental level. I'm sure if you're using Laserfish or you're from Laserfish or OnBase, you would disagree with me, or from Highland rather. But in any case, that second tier is sort of more departmental or small organization. The third one is Microsoft Technologies, obviously. And then some people consider their line of business applications to be their ECM system. And you might have, some or all of these. So select all that apply. If you don't have one, obviously select the last one. I'm going to launch the poll now. And give you a little bit of time to respond. Please do that as quickly as you can. This is just for fun, just so we can show the audience what people are doing. And I want to close this relatively soon. So. I'm not seeing any voting. Constantine, are you seeing the poll? Oh, now we're getting it. Okay, might have been a little delay there. Okay, give about 10 more seconds. 5, if you haven't voted yet, vote for this, vote on the election. All right, I'm going to close this and I'm going to share the results, and you can see that those systems that have been around for a long time have a good market share. I've got a slide later where I'm going to show market share. I'm surprised actually by the second one. We do a lot of RFPs. We see Laserfish and Highland OnBase regularly chosen. So that's interesting to see. I'm very happy, of course, to see the Microsoft products where they are. That's our core system, and then the line of business apps is up there too. So very interesting. Thank you for voting. I'm going to hide the poll and we'll continue on. So. Okay, so this AIM definition has been around forever. This is their definition of enterprise content management. I'm kind of going to use enterprise content management and electronic document and records management systems synonymously today. So EDRMS, or I might call it records management. They are different, and I'll distinguish that a little bit. But just to make it easy, you might hear me say ECM. I'm also talking about records management, and there's a little bit a blur in that area, but the AIM definition is the strategies, methods, and tools used to capture, manage, store, preserve, and deliver content and documents related to organizational processes. And the components that I identified here are that you have a centralized repository as distinct from having content on your laptop and other places. It's centralized, which means you have things like library services, check-in, check-out, versioning, easier to back up, better search. There's a whole bunch of things that's sort of a core component of an ECM system. Some amount of taxonomy. You can get away with almost no taxonomy in Office 365. However, we like to implement what we call the minimum effective dose, and that would be the field, the metadata required to support search and search refiners. So an example is if I have an invoice and I have a content type, or what might be called in another system a document type. In Office 365, it's content type. If I have that content type and it has fields for, let's say, the amount, the vendor name, and the date of the invoice, and that might be collected as a part of a scan operation. So maybe I use KnowledgeLake to sort of intelligently pick off that data and store it as metadata with the document when I scanned it. I can then refine by, I want to see all invoices, not just documents that have the word in it, but actually documents that are associated with the invoice content type. And then I want to refine by ShareSquared and fiscal year 2018, and within a range of $50,000 to $100,000. So I can't do those things without taxonomy. And so that is a core component of any of the work we do, and absolutely required to have an effective ECM system. The next one is document capture and indexing, and Constantine's going to spend a good amount of time on that, so I won't. The interesting thing to point out there is that in our year-long webinar series, we've covered most of these topics, and the typical rhythm has been to say, this is how Microsoft does it, this is what's available out of the box in Office 365, and this is a partner product that we typically bring in to enhance or augment the capabilities that Microsoft provides. In this area, Microsoft doesn't have a document capture solution, so you're going to see that in detail today. Workflow, at a minimum, document approval, but could also be automating various business processes. Retention and disposition, so this is where we're kind of moving away from the ECM part and into the records management piece. You could just be storing documents and not worry about how long they're retained or disposed of, but You know, a full-featured system is going to have that. You don't want documents to stay around forever for lots of reasons, not just storage, but legal issues and things like that. And then optionally, you might have a whole bunch of other things like integration to other systems, your ERP system, your permitting system, things like that. Email management. Earlier this year, we did a webinar with Harmony, and Harmony has an Outlook add-in for email management. Digital signatures, products like DocuSign, although you can do some digital signature-like things in Office 365. Auto classification to identify the documents automatically. So this is an invoice, this is a contract, this is an employee record or part of an employee record. Annotation and redaction, and then analytics to see, you know, kind of what documents have metadata or what state different documents are in. Are they ready for disposition? Things like that. So this slide shows the typical trajectory or the way that we typically see systems evolve over time. And of course, our focus is Office 365 and SharePoint. So oftentimes we see that the initial focus is on portals and collaboration, might be departmental portals, could have some content publishing or intranet, an intranet use case. And then, you know, as systems grow over time and you're putting more and more documents into SharePoint or Office 365, it starts to become important to manage those documents. And this is where that taxonomy I talked about comes in. You want to have access from any location, from any device. You want to start to manage those document processes. So it could be just simple approvals, could also be more sophisticated workflows that surround a document process. And then file share migration, getting documents, all the documents into and centralized in the system. In the next couple of columns, we've got the ECM and records management pieces. So we're adding more taxonomy. We're starting to declare and manage records. We want to automate retention disposition. We start to capture documents in paper form, things like that. And overall records management is about supporting the legal and regulatory requirements related to different types of documents. So those might be federal, those might be regional or state. Those could be regulatory, as in I'm in the wastewater industry and I need to keep certain documents for a period of time, or they could just be organizational. You know, we in our company need to keep this. For example, LA County, we've done a lot of business with. They keep employee records for 30 years past the termination of the employee. So it's that kind of thing. System integration, oftentimes we integrate to these external systems to get unique identifiers, things like the permit number, the employee ID, the asset number, things like that. And then also to expose that line of business data for dashboards, sometimes for document archiving. So you could have 10 different line of business applications that each have their own repository for documents. We've implemented solutions where we bring those all into Office 365. So you've got one place where documents ultimately are managed and disposed of, rather than keeping them in the siloed applications that do other things, your business applications. Moving to the next two columns, we've got process automation. I've talked a little bit about this, but this is, you know, automating business processes, moving off of paper transactions and things like that, and sort of orchestration of tasks across some business process. And then on the far right, we've got robotic process automation. We had last webinar was on that one. You know, spent a lot of time on that. That's about task automation, business intelligence, doing dashboards and scorecards, and then business process management, you know, looking at those reporting, those analytics to actually improve the processes. Okay, so this is the pictures here, lower left is from 2018, and I couldn't find a newer one, but this is, I believe, from AIM, and it shows that, I think the interesting part is that, to me at least, is that Microsoft in 2018 had the vast majority of the ECM market, and that pie slice is bigger. I promise you, if I could find a new one, I would. But here's some, you know, kind of interesting points. This market's not going away. Obviously, organizations are continuing to want to better manage documents and better report on them and better, you know, conform to regulatory requirements. And then there are privacy issues now that have come, you know, into play, which further pushes the need to have an enterprise content and records management solution. We've seen a lot of consolidation. I mentioned Microsoft is growing, and then these are older bullets, but IBM FileNet we're seeing be replaced a lot. We've done a lot of projects where we've moved FileNet content into Office 365. Same with OpenText, but OpenText has acquired a few companies and so forth. So the market is changing. Microsoft is very dominant. OpenText is right up in there. We did a webinar months ago where we had the Gartner snapshots of this quadrant, so you can go back and take a look at that. And there's a link down in the deck here for that. All right, and so these are just some Gartner things. Obviously, very good things to say about SharePoint. And it kind of, if you read this text, and we're going to distribute the slides so you can look at them again later, but it covers all of the bases in terms of collaboration and workflow and all the things I've been talking about. And the numbers prove it out. I mean, Office 365 SharePoint is Microsoft's biggest selling server product of all time. So it's done well. The introduction of the Microsoft Graph gives us a lot more data analytics to report on, things like that. And the way we approach these solutions overall is Microsoft is the repository for us. KnowledgeLake, and there are other products, Kofax, there's a bunch of those here, but we went with KnowledgeLake for capture many, many years ago because they were the first ones to be integrated well with SharePoint and Office 365, and they continue to use that as their primary focus. They do integrate with other repositories, but that was a huge difference between KnowledgeLake and the other capture products that are also typically less expensive. Microsoft has made moves in the workflow area, as you know, with Power Automate. We did a webinar with Gimel. There are other add-ons for records management that we work with. We worked with RecordPoint and Collabware in the past. Gimel is an example of an add-on that gives you enhanced records management features. Most people know who DocuSign is. Harmony, we did a webinar, and these are all on our website. You'll get a link to this, but you can take a look at their Outlook and Office 365 integration product. Netrix, which used acquired concept searching for automatically identifying documents. In other words, determining this is an invoice versus a contract versus employee record automatically without end users having to identify them. And then content migration, we typically work with ShareGate or SkySync for large scale migrations. SkySync has a use case where they move 60 terabytes of content in a weekend. So, okay, we're gonna do another poll and then we're gonna switch gears and Constantine will take over. So we're looking for you to rate your document capture product. I'm going to start the poll. And again, this is just for fun. All right, vote, please, if you would. Seems again we have a delay in counting the votes. They just started coming in, so I'm hoping this is not indicative of how things will be in November. But please vote now. If you're going to vote, we can give it about 10 more seconds. All right, got about 5 seconds. Get your vote in. Make your vote count. Okay, I'm gonna close the poll and share it with you. And good, we've got a few very happy capture product owners. Some in the middle and some not so happy. So there's an opportunity for you if you don't have one, or if you're in any of those last 3 buckets, fair, poor, or not applicable, or any of them, to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to do a demo and talk about what's not working and maybe some other alternatives. So please do reach out if you're interested. Okay, Constantine, I believe we're up to you now. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, David. So I won't spend too long on the slides. I'm kind of excited about showing you the platform. So just kind of give you a little bit of a background about who we are. So as you can see, the company started in 1999. We're headquartered in St. Louis, but we're pretty much scattered across the US and really focus on transactional content management. So the company was built on working with SharePoint, and as the Microsoft platform evolved and as we've evolved, as David mentioned, we do support other repositories, but Microsoft is still our first-class citizen, and we've expanded our functionality to not just deal with SharePoint, but also expanded that functionality to support Azure as a repository as well. Won't harp on the partner of the year and et cetera. You guys can see that, but we do have a really nice footprint within the Microsoft ecosystem, and our client base, our users are really scattered all throughout the world with over 2 million users across 35 countries. So as a very high level view, really the KnowledgeLake platform really is built on these three pillars of capture services, which I'll spend most of the time on today, process and content services. So for as more of a background, our platform was built for being cloud native. It runs in an Azure environment. So there's zero infrastructure that needs to be placed onto your environment. All the processing is handled in our environment, and all the documents live in yours, so you have that security and peace of mind. From the capture services side of things, really we focus on being able to ingest documents from wherever they're coming in from. So that could be simple as I have a desktop scanner or a multifunction device. It could be an email account that we're monitoring, or importing a local thing, or taking a picture of something and ingesting it that way. On the process services, then we have the ability to automate tasks, whether we're being fed information from something like a Power Automate or having intelligent routing based on any of the metadata values within the system, and then leveraging RPA for doing stuff like data entry, as well as many other use cases once we have all that information extracted. And then finally, really at the content services side of things, as those documents get routed and go through the process, they'll ultimately be released to the repository of choice. In most cases, it is SharePoint or Azure. They'll get routed in a folder depending on the metadata as needed, and then we provide a unified interface. So as the users that are ingesting and indexing documents in the platform, they're able to stay in that same platform and find the content as well without having to maneuver to SharePoint and leverage those searches as well. So just a very high level, I'm going to go in a lot more detail on this through the actual demo. I feel it'll be more valuable than just diving into additional slides. The demo is really going to be focused on that capture process, the machine learning, intelligent routing, and then the last piece of document storage and retrieval. So let me share out the rest of my screen. Okay. Hopefully everybody could see that. You should be seeing Outlook webmail at the moment. And the reason that I like to start here is, as I mentioned, from the capture side, we are not limiting you to just, here's your scanner, put some paper into it and start scanning stuff, especially nowadays with a lot of the workforce being forced to work from home or work from anywhere. Having the functionality and the flexibility to ingest from other sources has become a great need. So with the email integration, there's a couple of use cases here that we'll tackle. For one is we do have these Office add-ins, which allows a user to choose more of an ad hoc type of scanning or ingestion, of documents, right? So I have this email open, I find it relevant to what I am doing, and I want to be able to capture the message in the attachment, or maybe in this case, just the attachment is relevant to me. I can select that. This is linked to my SharePoint online library. And as I choose the content type, as you can see, it'll read the taxonomy from my SharePoint environment or from my Azure environment and give me the properties that are relevant to be populated. From here, I can leverage stuff like database lookups. In this case here, I have a connection to my Azure SQL environment to allow for auto indexing, and I can upload directly from here. So this is really more of an ad hoc way of capturing. The common use case that we see when it comes to capturing from email is you have this inbox. So in this case, I have inbox and a subfolder for invoices. And the idea here is that as a company, you have a dedicated inbox where your vendors are sending you these invoices, or your HR department has applications or other contracts, vendor agreements coming through. And then within our platform, we're able to leverage import jobs to say, let's go ahead and monitor this particular inbox. Let's go ahead and, let's say, move these documents to a new folder once they're ingested. Which process do you want it to be sent to, and what is the schedule that you want to have it run on that makes the most sense for your organization. And what that's going to do is it's going to take a look at all of the unread emails in that particular inbox, or whatever inbox it's monitoring, and it's going to move them out of here. In my case, I move them to a separate folder, more of as a best practice to have this clear distinction of what documents are brought in via the import job versus those that were read by a person. So it's going to bring all these in to allow you to automate the ingestion process of these things. Now, no longer have to worry about monitoring this inbox or having to download, print anything out, move stuff around. So it really kind of offloads that responsibility from the users. Let the import job run on whatever schedule works best for you, and these documents will just be absorbed into the platform. The same way we have these import jobs for email, so we can monitor local folders as well. And a great use case here would be you have a multifunction device that is releasing documents. Those could be released to an email or to a network folder, and we can monitor that. Once again, designate which workflow it needs to go to, and set up a schedule that works best to ingest those documents as well. And what you're seeing now is the email is being moved out and being moved to a different folder. So this right here, this is the main page. I did customize it a bit to make it more of a friendly experience for me as a user, but this is the main page of the KnowledgeLake platform. As a best practice, we recommend that clients will log in, authenticate using their Azure Active Directory credentials. So you don't have to worry about creating separate catalogs or different logins for users to access the platform. What they already access for their environment, they can be leveraged to be able to access this platform as well. To continue on that trend of capture, if you do still have the need for, I have a scanner attached to my desktop, I want to be able to just capture those documents, we do have the scan app here, and that's going to allow the user to scan directly through the browser. Based on the way the system is designed, it's very granular in the permissions. So it's not going to be just a matter of, do you have permissions to scan, yes or no? It's going to be, well, do you have permissions to scan? If yes, what permissions within the scan app do you need to have? So if I don't want to give the user the ability to do ad hoc scanning, or ability to manage profiles, delete profiles, or anything of the sort, I can disable all of that. And as a user, I will just see the profiles that were shared out with me. Can select a profile, and this will load all of the settings that need to be adhered to. So let's say the DPI settings, the simplex versus duplex. If you have any barcode separation rules or page counting rules or whatnot, and then you're able to scan or import directly from this interface. And really, we want to leverage the machine learning part of the platform. So what I'm showing you here is just a generic batch. It's a mixed document batch where I have some HR documents, I have some invoices that need to go through, as well as just some random things in here. And I'm going to show you how we would take this document that has multiple pages that need to be broken up into their own unique documents and their own content types, be able to automatically classify these, separate these, and extract the information. And just before I go there, I want to quickly talk about the upload app. So at face value, the upload app is very similar to the scan in terms of being able to just choose the file to drop in there. You can drag and drop or click on it to select the file that you may have locally. However, a huge benefit of this platform is that since it is cloud friendly, it's also mobile device aware. So if I was to log in to the same site with my same Active Active Directory credentials from my mobile device and click on the upload app, I would get a pop-up. It says, hey, I recognize you have a camera, and it'll give me the option to take a picture of something. So this way I can ingest the content as I see it instead of waiting till I'm back somewhere where there's a scanner available for me. So now I'm gonna move over here to the index queue. So the index queue has two tabs, has my batches and all batches. So my batches would be, I have opened these 3 batches, they're locked to me as a user, versus all batches would be, I'm in a queue where I'm in, let's say, accounting or HR, and these batches are being scanned and ingested, and I have the ability to index and permissions to index these particular batches. So I'm gonna click on index. The batch is gonna load, and you can see it's a very similar interface to what you saw in the scan app. But however, what happened here is we had, based on the fingerprints and the training that we've done for the system, we had automatically recognized a lot of these documents and separated them without having to use any cover sheets, without having to use any page counts or blank page removal or anything of the sort. So if you see document 1, it recognized that it was an employee application. The way this happened behind the scenes is we leverage a combination of both image recognition as well as the OCR content on the document itself. So as this page goes through, it says, oh, I recognize this logo, or perhaps I recognize what it says on here, and I have enough information to make intelligent decision, automatically set the content type here to employment application. Once I do that, I can use a combination of either regex anchors or image anchors to pick off the relevant fields. So what I did here was I created a regex anchor for name, last, first, middle. Whenever it saw this said, hey, once I find this anywhere on the page, go ahead and look at these locations to extract the relevant information. And now we can leverage additional behaviors like removing special characters to say, hey, I'm extracting this social, but I don't want to have these dashes either because the line of business application that I'll be inputting this information to doesn't accept them, or because I'm worried about the variance with user 1 and user 2 typing it in differently. So this way you can set these behaviors so it'll automatically remove those characters. So whether this is done manually or via machine learning, you kind of ensure that the final format is going to be the same. With document 2, it seems like it's a supporting document. Obviously, it's not unclassified because there's nothing on here for us to train it off of. It's 2 different pieces of information done together. So my best guess is document 2 should have been as a supporting doc to document 1, and I can easily drag and drop it over, copy and paste, and update my document assembly and just delete this one afterwards if I don't need it anymore. Moving on to document 3. So in this one, not a whole lot of fanciness to pick off the information. The way this worked was purely we read the barcode, which did a database lookup off of the employee ID, and that populated the rest of the values. The only exception on here is being we did leverage the machine learning to do signature detection. So I said anytime I find this document, it's pretty standard. I know exactly where the signature should be. So we have this box here behind the scenes that is monitoring this. And if it recognizes there's a signature on here, it'll change this Boolean field to a check mark as opposed to no check mark. So we can automatically detect whether the signature is present or not. And I can keep going through these. It's the same idea where in this particular case, we identify what this was, and we felt like the regex anchor wasn't going to work because the quality was going to be subpar from time to time. So even though I used the regex anchor here, I could easily just have used, like I did here, an image anchor instead of a regex anchor to say, anytime I see this picture anywhere on the page, go ahead and look down and extract the information that's necessary. So it gets more interesting when we get to stuff like invoices, where there's going to be some information that's needed, like for instance, the vendor ID, that's just not going to be on the page. And the way we address that issue is that by recognizing what this is, not only are we able to classify the content type as an invoice, but we can automatically set some fixed values. So if you could see here, I have my vendor name and my vendor ID is not being extracted from the screen. It's part of a fixed value with this fingerprint. So once we recognize that this is an invoice from CDW, we don't have to worry about OCRing the word CDW direct. We can build it in as a static value associated with this to make sure that even if the quality of this document will be subpar, we're not relying on those OCR values. We can just have them as fixed values to pick off what we need. And then the rest of this page is fairly similar. We're using a combination of regex anchors for like the purchase order and an image anchor to pick off the rest of the stuff. And if a use case dictates it as well, you do have the ability to do line item extraction through the platform. You can see that right here. And then if you needed to change this for any reason, amend it, you can always edit the table, edit as a CSV, add rows, add columns, delete whatever information not necessary, so that can be passed along the process to other applications as needed. So really, as a user, I wouldn't have to worry about any of these documents that have a check mark next to it. I would only be handling the exceptions like document 8. And as you could see with document 8, it found everything correctly. However, the OCR snippet is just not legible, right? We couldn't figure out what that was based on this snippet. So the user will be flagged here and say, go ahead and just index this one value before moving on, and then you can go ahead and finish with the process and just go on to the next batches as needed. And really the benefit of this approach of having this combination of both image as well as text classification is really becomes evident in situations like this, right? Where the base image that I used to train this didn't have this chunk in the corner ripped off. And that if I was trying to do OCR for a coach's choice, I really didn't have that opportunity here because there's no OCR engine to be able to recognize what this was. But since we're treating this really as just as an image, we have enough unique information to recognize that this is indeed an invoice from coach's choice, and then pick off the rest of the information from this document as needed. So once we index everything we need, if let's say that there's any rules in place, obviously we can leverage all this metadata information, like this is a very high, let's say, invoice amount, it's over $10,000. So if you do have a need at this point to then have some sort of a approval, really what comes into play is we can absolutely leverage the investment you might already have in something like a Power Automate on the Microsoft platform. And then we do have this Tasks app, which allows us to integrate with Power Automate as well as other workflow tools, or it could be self-sustained within the platform to where I can have a routing tree saying that for any documents or any invoices that are greater than, let's say, $10,000, which I believe this one was, go ahead and route them to a particular user for some kind of approval. So here in my inbox, I have the index properties, I have my system properties, I have my viewer with the information, and then I have the ability to approve this directly from the same platform that I'm already working within, and say, yep, I want to go ahead and approve this, or perhaps I'm say no and have additional options available to me. And then once this is approved, I can just go ahead and complete this task and then move on with the rest of the process, right? So at this point, we figured the batch has been fully indexed, classified, all the information is extracted, whatever needed to have approvals has approvals, and now we can leverage something like RPA, which is part of the platform as well, to go ahead and do the data entry into whatever line of business application you folks may have. So as the batch moves down the process, it'll kick off the automations. These bots will run in your environment. In this case, I have 4 VMs running in my environment connected to Business Central, and it's going to load them up. Since it's a web page, we can't simply put a timer on it because things load at different speeds. So we have different markers to recognize when the page is fully loaded, and we can have the bots go in and handle this data entry on the user's behalf to automate from end to end this process all the way through. So we can automate the capture via, let's say, one of the import jobs, automate the classification and extraction via machine learning, give you a unified platform to handle any exceptions as well as handle any approvals by connecting to like the Power Automate platform or by leveraging the tasks within this platform as well, and then have the bots, the data entry into whatever line of business application may be. So now we followed this document all the way through the process. So then really the last thing that's going to be needed is going to be the search aspect, right? So there's a couple of ways that we handle search. For one is we can say, what if the user is not going to be in our platform? What if the user needs to be in Dynamics CRM 365, and they want to be able to leverage the same technology that we saw here with the bots to be able to retrieve documents. So we don't want users to store stuff in line with business applications because it's really not made for that, and it becomes to a situation where you have these silos of data that become very difficult to manage. The way we address that is saying, store the documents in SharePoint or in Azure, and then leverage the RPA technology, like this magic button here, to be able to retrieve the documents that are relevant to you. So I have this action available. The button popped up when I'm on the screen. It recognizes what's on here, and when I click on here, it's going to read the name from here. It's going to pass the information along through the URL. It's going to open up the correct search and give me back my results. So now I've image enabled my line of business application. So as a user, I don't have to really do anything other than push the button. It'll take me to the page that it needs to. And now I can select which document I want to open. If there's only one document being returned, we can open the document directly. But now you have the viewer open to you. Once again, you have all of the properties available to you on the right-hand side. You have the image available here as well. And now, depending on the permissions of the particular user, you can edit the metadata from here, copy the link, download, print documents. We have annotations built in as well if you needed to add any of those. Some folks we do have that are using it for a redaction point of view purpose. And then once you have these annotations, now you're able to, when you go to print a document, for instance, or download it, you're able to print or download with or without the annotations. So it really becomes a powerful tool to have this unified platform with all of your options available to you, all from one fingerprint. Also all at your fingerprints. If you don't need it to go through this process, you can always just leverage the search button directly from the home page. It'll take you back to whatever you have available for searches, depending on your permissions, and you could just go through this process. But we find for users that are working in live business applications, that button is a great tool to leverage as well. So really from the demo side of things, didn't mean to rush through, but want to be mindful of everyone's time. I've showed you what I want to show. So Dave, I'm gonna pop back the presentation unless you want me to focus on anything else before I do that.
No, I think we can go back to the presentation and then, we'll just have more time at the end. And if somebody, in addition to asking questions, if somebody wants to see something, we'll see if Constantine is on his best today. and can show something ad hoc.
Yeah, no problem at all.
All right, we're going to do one more poll here. Now, look, the intent here is if you're interested in a follow-up email, let us know what you're interested in, select all that apply. I'm not going to show the results of this poll. This is David speaking. You can also just email me, but if you do this, we'll get a report from GoToWebinar, and I can follow up with you and try to help you out with whatever interests you. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll now. If you're not interested in being contacted by email, obviously don't vote. I'll give that a little bit of time. Oh, I don't know how we're going to follow up with the hundreds of people, Constantine. I'm just kidding. If you've been coming to our webinars, you know that we're not a sales organization. We're a bunch of technical guys. I used to be a programmer, and I've sort of moved up through the ranks, and I don't write code anymore. But I'm not a sales guy. So we give it about 10 more seconds. We do have some people who would like to be contacted, so that's great. You'll get an email from me. This is David again, and then we can schedule a call or however you want to move. So, okay, I'm gonna close this poll. I'm not gonna show it because it's just for us. So Constantine, let's take it home. So these are some resources. Again, the links at the bottom, obviously can't click on the screen right now, but if you want to download the presentation, we'll send an email, as I said at the outset of the webinar, with it. Tomorrow or Friday, you'll get an email with a link to the presentation and the recording, and these links are live. The webinar series that we've done all year is that second link. Obviously, the first link is more information about KnowledgeLake. And then I selected the third link is one of the webinars in particular, but it sort of relates to today's content because it was the one that Jim and I did that provided an overview of Office 365 and what works and what doesn't from a records management or enterprise content management perspective. And it was very well attended. I think I know we had 596 people registered and about 450 people joined. So check that one out, and it kind of coming back full circle now with today a little bit. Next year, hopefully in January, although we haven't put the dates together yet, we're going to do a new webinar series. The working name is Anatomy of Office 365 Project from Inception to Production Launch. The project will most likely be collaboration, portals, and internet and records management. So we do that's the project we do the most often at ShareSquared. And it gives us an opportunity to get into kind of all of the things we talked about, or I talked about earlier, including KnowledgeLake. I don't have them listed here, but so I did this just on the slide very quickly this morning. But we'll cover things like this internal tool called the cookbook that we use for project estimation. But we'll show you how we estimate projects. We'll teach you about that. We'll show you how we use Project Online to manage our projects. And we also, each customer that we work with gets an Office 365 project portal. If you've been on our other webinars, you may have seen that, but we'll talk about how we create that, what's in it. There's some lightweight taxonomy, things like that. Our last webinar that was on workflow and robotic process automation, we covered these three workflows, but we'll cover them again and some others, just general kind of workflow processes that we've either done for customers or that we use internally to manage a project. We'll go deep into taxonomy design and development. We've touched on it, we've flashed it on the screen, we've teased you if you've been on our webinars. I've had several people email me and say, can you just do an entire webinar on that one thing that Jim spent 5 or 10 minutes on? Jim, I keep referring to as our chief architect, and he was doing the demos on a lot of these webinars. So we're going to dive into that more deeply. We'll dive into how we do portal deployment. So we have a utility, as with all our utilities, driven by a Excel workbook, that if we looked at your organizational chart and you identified for us which parts of the organization represents a business unit that gets a team site and who gets a communication site and so forth in Office 365, we fill out the workbook and we can deploy. Let's say you have 500 business units that could be deployed in a matter of a couple of hours. So we'll show you some of the technology behind that. We'll get into how you can customize the branding in Office 365. We'll talk about content migration, planning, ROD analysis, removing the redundant, obsolete, and trivial content, migration strategies. So some of the things we do, we set a cutoff date. We're not going to move anything older than 10 years old, or we're going to move everything into a document center, and then we're going to have users move the content into their collaboration team sites when they need it. That's a way of making them do it, so to speak. So there's a whole bunch of techniques that we've employed over time on content migration. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into some of the third-party applications potentially, not as deeply as we've done on some of the webinars. We will not have partners joining us on any of these, I don't think. I think that we'll just cover them, but sort of how does Gimbal fit in, or RecordPoint? How does Visual SP fit in? How does KnowledgeLake fit in? I don't have them here, but PlumSale, Aquaforce, we resell and implement, I think, 12 or 14 different products. So we'll spend a little time on that, but mostly what you'll see from the inside is how to ShareSquared, an organization who's been around for 15 years and had 13 SharePoint MVPs and 5 Microsoft certified masters. How do they do a project? So if you're doing your own project, we have some tools that you'll see that, you may not have, but I think you'll learn a lot about how this is done by a company that does it all the time, with different requirements, with different types of customers in different industries. I think that we've come up with a process that is extremely effective. And so we hope that you'll join us. So look for an email in January. We're hoping to start the 3rd week of January with that. And it'll run probably 8 sessions or so, something like that. So, okay, with that, I think let's look at the next slide. I think we're ready for QA. We'll just leave this slide up. And let me take a look at the questions that have been asked so far. Again, you're invited to ask questions. In this case, we have 10 minutes left, so we probably won't run long. We'll probably just close at the end of the hour unless there's a lot more. And if there's something you want to see that Constantine can quickly demo, let us know. So first question, will the deck be sent? Yes. Within a couple of days, you get an email. The second one for you, Constantine. Can the Outlook add-in for uploads be connected to more than one SharePoint library?
Yes, absolutely. So the Outlook add-in is not connected to any library. It is connected to the KnowledgeLake platform, which is synced up with your SharePoint taxonomy. So depending on that particular user's permission, they'll only see the content types that they have access to, and that content type is what is connected to what particular library. So, yeah, it's connected to your entire SharePoint environment, but the user will only interact with those that they have access to or permissions to, is more accurate.
Perfect. And I'll add to that, there are a lot of ways to get content into SharePoint or Office 365. There are some out-of-the-box methods, but they're a little clunky. And we did a webinar with Harmony, and they have an email management tool, and there's a panel that opens up to the right in Outlook that is pretty good. It's aware of the taxonomy, and you can work within Outlook, where a lot of people are when you're dealing with email and attachments. We have a product called Taxonomy Tiles, which we've also flashed on the screen, and we will do some focus sessions on separate from the next webinar, I think, or webinar series. And Taxonomy Tiles can live on a web page or in Teams, or now we have a new product, Taxonomy Tiles for Windows. It's a Windows app, and you have tiles that you can drag and drop content onto. And in that case, as it relates to this question, you can not only point to different libraries with a tile. So I could say, I could have tiles that are things like an invoice, a contract, and intellectual property, let's say. Let's say the intellectual property needs to go into a more secure or different library, a different site, collection, and library where there's only members who are able to see intellectual property. So I can use the tile the tile configuration allows you to configure the target, the destination for any documents dropped on the tile. In fact, the example that I have on my desktop, I'm pointing to 2 different tenants. So if you ever do that, we have our ShareSquared tenant and our demo tenant. So it doesn't matter as long as you put in the credentials. So there's lots of ways to do it. You'll see our taxonomy tiles. We get some marketing around that at some point in time. We're ready for prime time, and we want to start selling it. And, well, we have actually for a year we've been selling it, but only to people we knew well through RFPs and things like that. So we want to sell it to a broader audience. Okay, next question. Does KnowledgeLake connect to WebCIMS, a correspondence tracking tool, i.e. can documents be ingested from a shared mailbox directly into Web, I don't know how to pronounce it, if it's WebCIMS, but WebCIMS, one word. Do you know?
So for most things other than, like the Microsoft ecosystem, we connect to it either through a custom connector that we can develop, or we can leverage RPA to connect to pretty much anything. So there is not an out-of-the-box connector for it. However, we really haven't found many things that we are not able to interact with, depending on the level of complexity that's needed.
So does that mean you have some kind of a connector or framework or something that if a connection doesn't exist out of the box, a company like ShareSquared or a customer can build on that to connect to anything? Is that accurate?
Yeah, so I would say it's more likely that ShareSquared would than the client themselves. But yes, so with our platform is highly extensible, and we've had integrations with other applications that are not going to be that are not out of the box, and that was done either via the partner or KnowledgeLake Direct, where we've expanded that beyond the masses. So since most of our clients are on the Microsoft platform, that's really kind of where we've spent our time to hone and make that experience as user friendly as possible. But since those other outliers do exist and we acknowledge that, we've built it in a way to where we can absolutely expand to support other backend solutions as needed.
Beautiful. Okay, next one. I need to download a large number of files from a website on a regular basis. Is there any ability to automate that kind of capture?
Yeah, and that's actually in the slide deck that David's going to send you on the KnowledgeLake link, we actually have a use case where somebody was doing exactly that via the RPA process. So we set up an automation for them that would go every morning to a particular site, or in their case, it was a lot of separate sites where they needed to get government bids from multiple sites. And we set up this automation that would kick off every morning, would scour the different sites that they would need to, find anything that was either new or updated, and download that and have that present. So the end users would save about 3 to 4 hours every morning by having this automation.
Perfect. Yeah, and if you want more information, the last webinar, which again, there'll be a link. It's on the ShareSquared website under resources webinars, but there's a link in the deck that we'll send out to get you to that page. The last webinar was on electronic forms, workflow, and RPA. And Joe LeBay, who's a colleague of Constantine's, did some demonstrations and talked about different RPA use cases. And I thought it was really good. I think it was well attended. People seemed to really enjoy it, but RPA, as we talked about in that webinar, is often used to automate a particular task within a workflow, like an individual task, whereas the workflow is more of the orchestration of tasks across a process. I learned that last month. I knew of RPA, but I had to do some research for the webinar. And I did know, I knew before that RPA can be used to automate tasks that really humans shouldn't be doing. Repetitive tasks that don't require a whole lot of knowledge, but they just take time. Tedious, low-value tasks. And so, that's exactly that question about downloading a bunch of files from a website on a regular basis. That doesn't take a whole lot. It's repetitive. It doesn't take a whole lot of judgment or knowledge to do it. It's just a task that has to be done. So RPA is the perfect technology for that. So, okay, that's all we got. We got a few thank yous and things like that. Thank you all for joining today. Again, if you want some other information or demo or something, always you can reach out to me on my contact information is on the screen, and we'll follow up with you via email with the recording and the deck. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when our new series, when we get it all planned out, we'll start sending emails about that. We hope you'll consider joining in the new year. With that, if we don't talk between now and then, have a wonderful rest of the year. And let's hope that 2021 is far more amazing than 2020. That's all I can say. Not that it's been terrible for all of us, but I do have some empathy for people who've had a tough time this year. And we certainly hope that it's better for everyone. All right. And with that, we are complete. Thank you, Constantine. I'll see you on the other side.
Sounds good. Thank you, David.
All righty. Bye-bye.